Morning, everyone. Hi, Vivek. Do we have everyone, all the panelists?
Yes, we have all. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll take a couple of minutes. Let's let people come in. We'll start in a couple of minutes. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this 54th edition of the Thursday webinar series on data-driven digital agriculture. This series brings innovations, thought leaders, startups, decision makers who work in the field of data, innovation, and digital applications all over the world. And today we are very happy to host this jointly with our colleagues and our partners from FAO, who are also doing very innovative things on geodata for improved water management and climate action. And I think today's webinar is very important in view of the renewed emphasis on climate change and climate adaptation. And the bank is also trying to, all the operations, we would like them to now have a strong data innovation foundation in every project we do. So the tools which we're going to listen from FAO are very important geodata tools, and the Earth Map and the Adaptation, Biodiversity. Earth Map we have heard earlier, but Adaptation, Biodiversity, and Carbon Mapping tool, ABC Map, and it's very new tool. And I think we are very happy that they're going to talk about that. Vapor portal also, which is bringing all this data at one place, is also an interesting innovation there. So I would, this is a very tight kind of a, set of panel. There are many panelists. So I would request my fellow panelists to really stick to the time. And we would like you to just, make sure that we have some time for discussions and questions from the audience through the virtual chat. So to the audience, warm welcome. Wherever you are, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Please put your questions in the chat as the presenters are coming in. Since we have many presenters, you could start putting the questions for the individual tool or the individual presenter in the chat. And I would request all the panelists to keep watching the virtual chat and also keep on responding through the virtual route. And then in the end, I will harvest some key questions and go through a round of questions for all the panelists based on the questions which audience is asking there. So I would introduce each panelist as they come. You have their CV. I can't introduce them in a full way, the way we are there, but I will definitely try to do that. Giulio Marchi and Laura Gorneri are first talking about the Earth map. Giulio is a geomedic in FAO, and his background in agronomy, remote sensing. He has worked with US Geological Survey, has worked in many countries on the FAO Google Land Monitoring Tools, Collect Earth and Earth Map, and with even with World Bank, IFAD, GCF, and EBRD. And Laura is a water resource and land monitoring expert, and she has specialized in integrated water resource management and is working with the FAO's Land and Water Division in the water management group. She's also part of land use monitoring innovation team at the Office of Climate Change Biodiversity. Also has worked on a number of these tools, including, I think, some of the interesting things which are happening in Africa Open Deal and other things. So over to you, Giulio and Laura. You have the next, I think, 10 or 15 minutes to present your do your presentation.
All right, I think you should see the thing here. And I think we can start. So good afternoon, good morning, greetings and salutation everyone from Giulio Marchi and Laura Guarnieri from the Land Use Monitoring and Innovation team in FAO. Here to present Earth Map. So let's get it cracked quite quickly here. The geometrically raising data availability in the last 20 years, and especially then, is, let's say, well known. We can quickly recall here the public release of Google Earth, the USGS Open Data Policy, and several portals giving free access to data that were coming with a hefty price just, let's say, weeks before that. In 2010, Google came up with an idea that was similar only at first glance. So this Google Earth Engine includes a wide range of data sets, constantly increasing and updating, but accompanied with the free access to a, let's say, a tremendous cloud platform for data processing in JavaScript and Python, allowing, as they say, petabyte scale analysis at home. Still, even with these tools around, the user needs, let's say, a moderate learning curve to switch from, how to say, immediate and large data availability to real data usability. So we started tipping on Earth Engine and the Google Earth Desktop for the coverage in multi-temporal and very high resolution images with this Collect Earth. That is a free and open, widely customizable app for land monitoring, but with a special eye on greenhouse gas activity data analysis for international reporting. The app was and still used in terms of projects in FAO and other organizations, and the methodology has also been validated in peer-reviewed papers as in Science. Still, again, we felt that the gap was to be addressed, let's say, to fully democratize the access to the most used functions and data, also for node initiates for land and climate monitoring. And so we started the development of this Earth map that also is under constant update and customization. And here we go with a screenshot from Earth map. So Earth map, let's say, it leverages on the cloud capability and repository of Google Earth Engine, but also from other sources. And through a simple point-and-click interface, the portal allows for access and data to these functions. So to transform, how to say, raw data into actionable information. The portal allows for multi-temporal and multi-parameters analysis without coding, and let's say, for project management at different stages, including water resources management, of course. So the different stages of the project would be from design, monitoring, and evaluation. And actually, the development is, as we say, user-oriented and demand-driven. EarthMap has been already customized in several cases, and for example, applied in the design of numerous projects from FAO, IFAD, EBRD, GCF projects in Pakistan for the Indus Basin water management, the Kyrgyzstan GCF for water carbon sequestration, but also for the World Bank, we have already had several collaborations, for example, for the Myanmar Loan on National Food and Agricultural Systems and the Kosovo Flows project. Laura will get into detail on a few functions. Here you just see the interface with the left column to display graphical products, to put it really quickly, and the right column to display charts, analysis, aggregations. Just one example on the data that actually can be extracted from EarthMap and can be elaborated outside from EarthMap itself. And here, EarthMap allowed a climate analysis in 3 areas of the Great Green Wall Initiative, highlighting a different pattern in the heat stress days in this period that was from 2000 to 2020. So here we have the 3 areas, for example, for North Africa, Sahel, and the SADC region. And so in the portal, we already can see the data and the charts, but still you can see the spikes of the days above 32 degrees in this case. That was selected as the threshold temperature. Understandably, they are higher in the Sahel region. Down in the chart, you can see these anomalies bars. And eventually here in the SADC region is clearly visibly steeper the trend line in the anomalies. And I would say enough with that. We can move to the, sorry.
Yes.
Yes,
Go back,
Laura,
please.
over to you.
Go back,
Yes.
please, the previous slide. Now, just to say that, yes, as Giulio mentioned, EarthMap covers a multitude of applications, including, Giulio, can you please go back to the previous slide just to,
Yes, sorry.
because the video is very fast. So including water resources management. And so now we are going to quickly introduce some examples. Yes, please. So the first example, please, Giulio. We show an irrigation scheme in southern Egypt. And from the water thematic section, we activate 3 FAO vapor layers that will be explained in details later by Livia, and apologies for any duplication. So the average actual evapotranspiration, the net primary production anomalies, and the average biomass water productivity. We can upload a custom area of interest and perform on-the-fly analysis running in Google Cloud. And in this case, we highlight an overall increase in crop biomass against a downward trend in water productivity in the same period, 2009-2021, which is a wake-up call for water resources managers. We move to Lake Chad. The user can choose between different boundaries, biophysical or administrative. We show the water occurrence change intensity layer from the Joint Research Center between 1984 and 2020. And from the land use land cover section, we activate the CCI land cover from ESA for the default year 2020. We can easily understand through the land cover multi-temporal statistics that the lake has stopped shrinking about 10 years ago. In EarthMap, it is also possible to extract the land cover change matrix, and the user can download the data in CSV format for further analysis. From the forestry section, we turn on the total tree carrying capacity from Basten et al. And we find out that there is a tree cover restoration potential in the area, which is a basis for building resilient livelihoods. Another example is the surprisingly high number of recently developed hydropower dams in Myanmar. And this can be displayed through another layer from JRC, the surface water transition classes between 1984 and 2020 that we overlay to the WWF hydrosheds river network. We can manually draw a polygon on one exceptionally wide reservoir, and by clicking anywhere inside it, we can run the zonal statistics, confirming the expansion of the new surface water classes. Let us move now to the Senegal River Basin for a quick analysis at watershed level. We display the digital elevation model from USGS Shuttle Radar Topography mission. Then we zoom into a small sub-watershed at the headwaters of the river in Guinea. And from the hydrology section, we turn on the curve number layer, and then we perform some statistics. First, we calculate some topographic parameters, including slope classes distribution within the subbasin. And then we generate the curve number for the subbasin and the runoff charts. The user can aggregate data at different time scales, annual, monthly time series, or monthly averages, and can choose specific years of start and end of the analysis within the time series. The chart is dynamic. We can highlight the monthly deviation, select specific time windows, and download the entire multi-temporal dataset. EarthMap includes also support features, the Help Center with dataset documentation and tutorials, and this Google Earth Engine app, the imagery compare tool, that allows to compare two different images from multiple Earth observation sources at different dates for land monitoring in near real time. And this is one of the preset examples for Cyclone Idai in Mozambique. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. I think you kicked us off extremely well, Laura. You have given us so many examples in such a short period that now I think it has whetted everyone's appetite to ask for more. I'm likely that I think you've given us a range of applications and shown what could be done with these set of tools. So thank you very much, Giulio and Laura, for kicking us off extremely well. And I would like to now bring in Martial Bernot, who is the FAO Senior Natural Resource Officer in Office of Climate Change, Biodiversity and Environment. He leads the NDC Expert Support Team. He also leads the Thematic Working Group on Agriculture, Food Security and Land Use in the NDC Partnership. He used to work with the French National Research Institute for Sustainable Development and is also collaborator and author and reviewer with IPCC since 2002 and current member of its Emission Factor Database Board. Marshall, over to you now. And again, you have 10 minutes to really tell us about this new tool. Thank you very much. Marshall, we can't hear you. You are muted somehow.
Okay, now you should hear me. So I was saying just thank you for the introduction, and I will really try to briefly introduce you to that new tool. So it's not like the previous tool and with a lot of different examples. It's a tool under development. So it's Adaptation, Biodiversity, and Carbon Mapping Tool, ABC Map, in short. And here you can see basically it's based on the same approach, Google Earth Engine. And thanks to my colleague that already introduced how it works, I save time. And basically why we developed that tool. FAO, we are supporting countries to draw their national policy and plan, NDC, National Adaptation Plan, Nationally Determined Contribution for NDC, long-term strategy for low emission development, and also NAMA action, National Appropriate Mitigation Action, the newborn Article 6 that has just been approved in Glasgow, but focusing on the FAO sector. So we have already a lot of relevant information, but the tool was lacking, trying to link the different Rio Convention and also to when you have a concern on climate, biodiversity, to put all this together. So here I will briefly present you the different part of the tool on adaptation, biodiversity, and carbon. So we have some climate profile, climatic information based on some information available here you can see on top of the screen. I will not read. And basically you have some output, some time series on temperature, precipitation, extreme heat, extreme precipitation. But just to give you an example, so for instance, we run that for Costa Rica. And you can see that for Costa Rica, for instance, in the last year, clear increase in temperature, decrease in number of days of extreme heat, total annual precipitation increasing a little bit, and you can see extreme precipitation also increasing, and we can run that for different country, different level. We have also geophysical profile, so similar to what you have seen previously. And I will explain why it's not a duplication soon. So basically it's based on the same kind of information, on the same kind of available data behind. But now we put also together other information like biodiversity, and we can have different aspects and mean species abundance. So we introduce here the global information. When 0, it's completely destroyed ecosystem, that's a parking lot. On 1, it's a full preserved forest, for instance. And you can see that Costa Rica, due to their strong, we know all environmental policies, their biodiversity index is going up. And if you run a ABC map, for instance, on other areas of the world, you will see that most of the time it's going down. So it's a very good example. And here you have an idea of the natural capital derived from the SVD database that is a follow-up of the TIB, the Economic of Ecosystem and Biodiversity. And we have an agreement also ongoing with Wageningen to update the database. So far you have 6,000. We know that those data are still limited, and we are trying to increase on mostly on, let's say, on long categories that are underrepresented so far in the database, mostly for crop. And you can have also access to protected areas, key biodiversity areas that are from also internationally wide recognized data set. On carbon, you can have an evolution. So you have the carbon map at different time, but you can have the evolution of your carbon stock, and you can see due to also the same national policies, and you have the spatial distribution of your carbon stock, all this calculated using IPCC guideline from 2006 up to the last refinement of 2019. But most important, and this is perhaps where we changed a little bit from a previous tool, we can have a project aspect. So you can have on here, this was my first screen, you remember. So what I presented to you was a baseline, but then you can select different area on the map. And let me swift here. You can still see my screen, I guess. So this is a BC map online. This is a typical farm you can see in the Amazon basin with a rainforest and some patch of pasture. So here you have already calculated to save time the IPCC land use. So we recategorize the available information using IPCC to link with IPCC default. And then we draw some polygon. For instance, here you can see it's we put some agroforestry or some forest. And then here you have then access to you can see the soil carbon stock will increase with implementation, for instance, with that of that activity. Or you can look also on the biodiversity, for instance, biodiversity is the same. On this reflect basically the land use you have introduced, so we are increasing the forest. So back to my presentation. Okay, so the tool offer you also that you can have not only a baseline, what happened, but also what can happen with a change in terms of policies. So it can be countrywide, a new NDC targeting a full sector, or a new national adaptation plan. And it will tell you what will happen with those policies, with those scenarios in terms of carbon, in terms of biomass. On where we are, so we are to release the tool in April this year, so very soon. We intend to regularly update and improve to fit user needs, because basically we are user driven. On here, we have already planned, this is already identified demand to have an adaptation. You know that UNFCCC is working on improving with IPCC's adaptation component. On mitigation metrics are quite fine and defined by IPCC, but there is still a lot to do on adaptation. And we have we want to link with the climate risk toolbox we have internally at FAO, but also with the IPCC Working Group 1 interactive atlas that have been published by during the 6th assessment report exercise recently. And also we are developing this tool is part of a set of different tools that are all interlinked or with the willingness to be linked. And we are developing another tool that is more an spread. It's an Excel based, so not spatial explicit, but which much more capacity in terms of calculation with livestock, manure management, wetland, all with a lot of different information. And the intention is to connect then ABC map with next stand for NDC expert tool to really provide to the user a set of tools that can help to draw really national policies. And with that, I want to thank all of you for the attention. And you can see here, you can work in any region. This is Washington, I guess. World Bank should be close to here, and you can see what was your change in the last 40 years. And here, the tool, you can already play with it, even if it's not officially released on online. Please, if you want to have a look, do so and revert to us with any comment you might have. And really, thanks for the attention. I will stop sharing my screen. Over to you.
Thanks a lot, Marshall. Thanks a lot. I think, again, a very exciting new tool. And I think you brought in some very interesting applications there, clearly, which go from policy level to a project level and across many kind of sectors and subsectors in natural resource management. And I think I hope it's used by more people as we go forward. I would request the FAO colleagues to provide any links you can provide to accessing these information about these tools in the chat, because that will allow a lot of our teams which are working on it to engage with you even after the webinar itself. In terms of the proceedings of this webinar and also lots of other material, I will ask Vivek to put a link on the screen. All the proceedings of all the 54 webinars and the proceedings, recordings, presentations are all available at our Open Learning Campus website. And these are accessed by about 4,900 people even after the webinar is over. And we have a very interesting set of people who continue to be engaged with these topics after them. We also have our website, data-driven digital agriculture knowledge and learning platform. It's an external website in which we have all the innovations happening globally are there on one platform. And we would also request you to contribute to this platform because it will grow through your contributions. And Vivek will also put these links in the chat so that you can access these as you go. Today's proceedings are also available there. I would now go to our next presenter. I think it is Livia Pisa. She is working in the Land and Water Division of FAO for past 12 years, and she has applied spatial analysis to water resource assessment. She also worked on remote sensing applications for water productivity monitoring and will present the WAPOR portal experiences. Over to you, Livia.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Let me share my screen. And so I'm Livia Peiser. I work in the Land and Water Division, and I will be briefly describing some of the work we do with regard to land and water productivity monitoring, in particular through the vapor projects that you might have heard about it already. So let me start by saying, oops. I think I stopped sharing somehow. Do you see it?
Yeah, it's coming. It's coming.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's there now.
Okay, good. So yeah, let me just provide a brief background on why we think it's important to monitor water productivity. And that's simply because we need to be able to produce more food using less water in the future. And that's what briefly we refer to when we talk about increasing water productivity. And in agriculture, that can be measured by relating the output expressed in kilograms per hectare or yield per unit of water consumed to obtain that output. So that is in cubic meter per hectare. And water productivity is rather complex to measure, even on the ground. But satellites can help us doing it in cost-effective ways over large areas and over long time periods, because we can estimate biomass. So that's the yield when you know what crop is grown, and also actually evapotranspiration, that is the water consumption. And because of that, of course, the water productivity is increasingly being referred to in the international agenda. In particular, can think of SDG 641 that is very much related to it, and for which, of course, FAO is a custodian agency. So that explains why FAO is investing efforts and capacities in monitoring this. But let me now show what we do with vapor. We access, we get data from open access satellites, from different sources of open access satellites, EU, Copernicus, or NASA, MODIS, all possible sources, provided that they are open access, and use them to calculate key land and water variables such as evaporation, biomass, and also land cover and so on, and convert that into indicators that we use to monitor water productivity, but also water accounting studies. We do that mainly, but not only, with the support of the government of the Netherlands in partnership with international organizations such as Geodata and IMI. And at the moment, the data production is supported by a consortium of private and public institutions. And Vapor started in 2015, but we just entered a second phase, at least until 2025. And the idea is we are now working closer to countries. So we have more than 10 countries in this current phase of the project, to develop specific applications that meet their needs with regard to water productivity. Let me, I will not take time in describing in detail what Vapor is about and what data we offer, because there's many resources available, and I will provide a link to those. In just 2 words, we provide data for Africa and the Near East. That's at the moment our coverage. With near real-time data, so every 10 days on biomass, on water consumption, and other variables. And that comes at different levels of resolution, also depending on what type of application we want to develop. So this map, for example, shows the continental scale data on water productivity at 250-meter resolution, but then we go down to 100-meter resolution for more than 20 countries. And for, at the moment, about 14 subnational areas that are mainly irrigation systems and watersheds. We calculate this data at 30-meter resolution, because that's where we can get into the detail of what crops are grown on the ground, and so be able to calculate crop-specific water productivity and crop-specific water consumption, and so on. This is one example of the Jazeera irrigation system in Sudan, where the individual fields can be identified and their associated water consumption patterns. Just a very quick range of applications that we developed in the countries we work with. This is, for example, the Office du Niger in Mali, and what is visible in the screen is this rectangular shape in the lower part of the map that suddenly becomes blue starting in 2014. And that's where a private sugarcane company started operations, and the authorities of the Office du Niger asked us to include this area in this high resolution area, because they wanted to be able to estimate the water diverted for that sugarcane operation area. Another country we actively work with is Sudan. Again, the Jazeera irrigation system. I mentioned that again because it's probably the largest irrigation system in sub-Saharan Africa, with huge water productivity gaps, and that means huge water productivity improvement potentials. And so we work in close collaboration with the Hydraulic Research Center in Sudan to identify these gaps and these areas where water productivity can be improved. So on one hand, we do that by using the remote sensing data that we provide, and on the other hand, they compare that with what farmers do on the ground to be able to relate water productivity with agronomic practices. So by doing that, for example, they were comparing what is it, I don't know, a number of irrigation that is influencing water productivity. Is it land preparation, seed density? What are the agronomic practices that have an influence on water productivity? And this work is ongoing. There were some preliminary findings, and now in the second phase, we'll go more in detail with this type of practical, let's say, findings of these studies. Another different type of application is made possible by the fact that vapor data is distributed through API, and that makes it easy to integrate into existing, for example, smartphone applications. So one of those was developed in Egypt to provide irrigation scheduling advice to farmers. And I think that the nice part of this smartphone application is that users can provide their own inputs. And with that, combining satellite-based data with farmers' inputs, we can get to a more accurate advice. So in this case, farmers can insert their crop type, their planting date, their irrigation type, all things that are very difficult, impossible to monitor from remote sensing. So the combination of the two makes higher impact. As I mentioned, the data is also useful for the water accounting studies at river basin that I think the bank knows has been supporting in some cases. So that we do that in collaboration with IHE Delft, and we publish the data also on the hand-in-hand platform that Carl will be showing. And I'd like to mention a few examples of collaboration we have with other also international finance institutions. I think that might be interesting for you to know. So, for example, the Asian Development Bank supporting the development of this water accounting portal that is part of Aquastat. Aquastat is the FAO Global Information System on Water and Agriculture, in which vapor is integrated, of course. And so ADB, now we have this one-shop, let's say, platform for the water accounting data where both FAO and, in this case, ADB water accounting studies can be accessed. With the Islamic Development Bank, they've been using vapor-based indicators as inputs to the water strategy. And also this led to those data being used for the guidelines on water allocation for agriculture that were recently approved by the League of Arab States. With the African Development Bank, they're also supporting FAO projects that, for example, there's one that in Libya aims at monitoring water use and infrastructure damage, irrigation infrastructure damage, and that through that there will be additional vapor data developed. With the World Bank, of course, we collaborate a lot in water productivity assessment, for example, in India and recently, and also in the NENA region. And that's what I would like to show in a couple of slides, just to highlight what our colleagues in the FAO Investment Center have been doing in the past months, where they basically took data from vapor. And because in the Bekaa Valley, that's the Bekaa Valley in Lebanon, in that area we have data 30-meter resolution and also crop type maps. They could filter wheat fields and derive yield maps and crop water productivity maps for those wheat fields in different seasons. And in this, what you see in these slides is something that is common, that shows that high yields do not necessarily come together with high crop water productivity. And that's because farmers are, of course, very much interested in getting high yields, but not so much in getting high water productivity, unless there's a regulatory framework that reduces water allocation, for example. So what we need to do is look at water productivity and yields together. And this is that's what they did. So in this way, they were able to identify the fields where both high yield and high water productivity were obtained. And again, these can be used as targets that are locally relevant. So target that makes sense in the Bekaa Valley, and understand what irrigation or agronomic practices can be used to reach those targets. To go towards the conclusion, I'd just like to mention that the vapor data is also available in the hand-in-hand platform that you will see in a minute. And that is helping us to get more and more analytical capabilities online. So, for example, it's easier now to have analysis and comparing. For example, what you see here is the biomass development during the growing season in 2 different years. The first year being 2018, and the second one is 2019. And see early on during the growing season that 2019 is much worse, and also estimate quantitatively the difference in biomass production. And this can be done just drawing a polygon and clicking on it, thanks to this hand-in-hand platform. To conclude, I'll leave some key resources, so the links to the website and the portal, and also mentioning that, as I said, the data is available through the hand-in-hand platform, through Earth Map, as we just saw. Thanks, Laura and Giulio, for mentioning that. Also Google Earth Engine, and any application that basically reads API. On the website, you can find the manuals and quality assessments and all sorts of things. And so there's also an online course available in English, French, and Arabic for those who want to learn more about it, and an application catalog. And the last takeaway messages before I conclude is that this open source and open access methodologies allow us to really go over or go beyond the current extent of the project, of the data that is currently Africa and the Near East, but we have an open source algorithm with which we can calculate the same variables anywhere in the world. And that allows also for a demand-driven customization of the application. We do have the intention to go to have a global coverage with the data, but we need partners to do that. And if you have ideas, reach out. We are already discussing this with, for example, with the EU Copernicus program, and they're interested in supporting at least the lower level resolution of some of these variables, but there's a lot that needs to be done. So please reach out. And yeah, just to remind that these data are usable for different types of stakeholders, from policymakers for monitoring SDG to science community, farmer association, but also, I think that's also important, the private sector that can develop tailored services based on this data and hopefully also make some money out of it in the countries we work with. And yes, that's all. Thank you. Yeah, please contact us if you have any idea for collaboration. Thank you.
Thanks, Livia, for illustrating number of applications and use cases. And I think please respond to Livia if you want to build this in other locations and use other variables. It's a good call. And we will talk to you also, Livia, later on, because I think we have some ideas on how we could expand the scope of this use of this tool there. Thanks a lot. Much appreciated. I would now go to the final presentation now. A lot of you know hand-in-hand geospatial tool. At least I've had some experience of looking at it, and Carl is a very well-known expert in this area. And I think it's good that he's talking about this, applications of hand-in-hand. And so Carl has 30 years experience developing IT solution services. He is also leading the development of the hand-in-hand geospatial platform. He comes from the tech world. He's cloud architect, Scrum Master, Prince2 project manager, and ITIL practitioner. I don't know all of these things, but I think they sound very cool, and so he has the computational science background and has worked on intelligent knowledge-based systems. Over to you, Carl.
Thank you very kindly also for the opportunity to present the hand-in-hand geospatial platform today. So let me just share my screen. If then someone could confirm that they are able to see it. Could someone confirm that they can hear me clearly and see my screen? Wonderful. Okay, so the hand-in-hand geospatial platform was being developed to integrate data services and advanced geospatial modeling and analytics for the hand-in-hand initiative. So that includes things like Google Earth Engine, or some of the Esri services, or some of the OpenGIS consortium services. So the hand-in-hand, the hand-in-hand, something is going on here, sorry. The hand-in-hand initiative is about identifying the biggest opportunities to raise the incomes and reduce the inequalities and vulnerabilities of rural populations who constitute the vast majority of the world's poor. So in order to do that, we needed to be able to assemble lots of different data from throughout the organization and from partners. And that's how the hand-in-hand geospatial platform was brought to life. So some of the examples of some of that analysis include things like, this is an example of a multi-criteria decision analysis, looking at where to put mobile storage locations in Kenya. So we're looking at many different dimensions of data, from where the people are, the electricity, the mobile phone coverage, the roads, the crops are grown. And similar examples could be, for example, in Nigeria, where we're looking at fish farming and photovoltaic energy, where best to locate that in Nigeria. In Tajikistan, for example, slaughterhouse location. In Rwanda, where to put dairy processing locations. And they give you an idea of the kind of value chains that are identified by governments and the reason that we really put this platform together. However, adding the data to the platform has been quite a big endeavor. So we've been working with many different groups throughout the house. So in particular, you heard just now Livia talking about the vapor data. And in fact, the whole of that unit provide the water-related data that we'll see shortly. So what we discovered is that once we put all this data together in order to be able to address the hand-in-hand initiative, we found out that we could actually use it for many different purposes. So some of the examples of the purposes is monitoring vegetation for preparing preparedness plans. The other one was that we could use it, we could use it directly for creating customized portals with subsets of data that were applicable to a particular community. So for example, for water accounting, looking at water withdrawals together with the evapotranspiration, together with the water productivity, and perhaps the projects that are going on, or the near real-time climate data. So that's a sort of a quick general background. I'll switch to the live presentation, which I hope will help you to better understand the platform. So the platform is accessed through the web, no special software is needed. And we basically have this catalog of data that we can add. So I'll just try and build a story up today together with you. So we could start out by looking at climate. I'm going to look at precipitation and historical. And I'm going to start out with this. So you'll see that there's a metadata record with each data set. So this is a data set coming from CHIRPS. And we can see here, for example, that we have a 3-monthly anomaly. So this is an anomaly data set. So I'll just pop it onto the map. And you can see, for example, that down here over the last 3 months, it's been a little bit drier than you might expect. So in fact, let me just put this into 2D and let me zoom in this area down here. So we're looking at the top of Mozambique, and we can see that that it's been quite dry over the last 3 months. So let's look at something else while I'm here. Then let's look what the future is looking like. So let's look at the forecast. So I'm going to put the forecast in. I'm going to split the screen into 2, and that will allow me to, for example, put the forecast on the right of the screen, and I can put the anomaly on the 3-month anomaly on the left of the screen. And so you can see that, in fact, let me just zoom out a little bit to make that a bit clearer. We can see that, that in fact, it's relatively dry also predicted in the coming month. Let's have a look what the forecast is like into May. So we can see these two things. So I'm just building this story as we go along. It's not a story I've particularly put too much earlier design into. So the other thing we can do now is we can, let's remove some of these and let's do a little bit of analytics. I'm just going to stay with precipitation for the minute, just to keep it simple, so you get an idea. I'm going to remove this split in the middle here, and I'm going to draw an area of interest. So let's just say we're interested in this area over here. Area of interest. And then we're going to run some analytics on that. So let's have a look. So I'm looking at the, actually I wanted to look at the actual precipitation, not the anomaly. So I'm going to pop that off and do some analysis. I want to look at the deviation from the averages from the area of interest. So I'm clicking on that. So now what it's doing is it's popping up to Google Earth Engine to collect the data so that we can get some analysis on this particular area. Okay, I'm rapidly running out of time here. This takes a few seconds for it to calculate the data. It gives you an idea of the actual time. While that's calculating, we can briefly take a look at some other things. So we've identified an area we're interested in, so we could actually take a look at what's going on there. So let's take a look at, for example, a completely different data set. So I'm going to take a look at here the harvested areas. So here we'll see, for example, that we have rice, rain-fed rice predominantly in this area, and that gives us an idea of some overlap between the two. The other thing that we can do is to say, okay, well, so what is the crop calendar there? So we could say, okay, so let's look at the crop calendar. So now looking at the crop calendar, so if we looked at harvesting rice, so the start of the rice harvesting is in March and April. So that's about now. So what you could imagine is there's being some kind of impact. So let's remove that and pop over to the agricultural stress index. So this is looking at an indication of how the crops are suffering, usually from drought. So we can pop that in, and you'll see that, in fact, looking at the last 10 days of February, that indeed several of these areas, sorry, that's the wrong one. I wanted to make this one, turn that one off a little bit. We can see that these areas indeed have been suffering, and again we can step through time between these things, and the map will follow us. So let's go back over to the map that was being generated in the background while I was talking. So you can see here a chart that's showing, let's see, we have the long-term average. So this is the historical rainfall there. We can see that in 2021, there was a slightly different pattern, and the 2022 has started here. So if we look at the overall view here, we can in fact indeed see that there's these last few months of 2021 have been drier than you might have expected. So let's scoot back over to the map and remove some of these things. And let's go and have a look at water before I run out of time. So let's have a look at water. We're going to take a look at vapor. Let's take a look at, we could even start with some, let's try net primary product in a monthly figure. So we can go back through months. You'll see that the data will update as I change the month. And so let's put our area of interest back on. So I hid our area of interest. Let's see, area of interest. This is the one I was interested in. And I can again do a similar kind of analysis. So I'll do a deviation from the averages for the area of interest. So I'm going to pop that off, and it's going to do a similar kind of calculation, comparing the actual, the net primary product for the current year to the up and coming years. While that's calculating, let me show you some additional stuff from Vapor in case you haven't seen it live. So let's see if we were to look at the, let's see, land cover. So we can also, for example, let me remove this, we're done with this. So we can also see in terms of the land cover from the classification coming from Vapor that we have in pink over here, this grassland that's rain fed. Okay, do we have the chart yet? Maybe the chart's still not quite there. Let's give it a second more to cook. In the meantime, I'm going to show you the some different kinds of data. So we could also be looking at pests and the impact of pests. So let's take a look at, for example, fall armyworm, and we can see that we have some spots in the country where we have some fall armyworm analysis. So here we'll see that there was a 26% to 50% infestation in the traps that were collecting data. So this is an idea of how you can put together with the pattern that we built up. Actually, I picked a bad example here. I don't think fall armyworm does infect rice. And, well, I'm not sure. I'm not an expert in this field. I'm more on the IT side. So let's go back a little bit to the chart. So here now we see that we have our net primary product, and you'll see that in fact the biomass is quite a lot lower so far compared to the long-term average, and in fact 2020 to 2021, which is much closer to, oops, I'm out of time. So that's the end of the presentation. Let me just stop sharing my screen.
Thanks a lot, Carl. I appreciate you doing this very fast and running through this very interesting tool, because I have used the tool in some situations and it's quite effective when you throw a problem at it and it tries to find out how the analytics can be done. So I think it's an interesting tool, and I hope our teams, some of our teams are using it, but I think it could be used even more. And I think we hope that in future we can run dedicated clinics for our teams which want to use these tools, which we call them data clinics or data labs. We're proposing to do that now in this year and the next year, but jointly with also with our colleagues there. And now it's a great pleasure for me to introduce my friend and colleague Harsh, who is a global lead for disruptive technology at the bank. He is the biggest champion of these tools and technologies and digital tools in the bank. He has supported a number of operations on environmental, water, natural resource projects, and he has been a global lead for watersheds, also leads bank's hydroinformatics focal area, and also leads a disruptive knowledge information data service help desk. Over to you, Harsh, also to give people a perspective of what the World Bank is doing, and what do you see as the kind of collaboration opportunities?
Thank you very much, Parmesh and Armin and others for this invite. It's been a fascinating session, and I think it's great to see the advances over time in terms of a lot of the FAO work that's being done. And I think in many ways, the FAO and the bank are kindred spirits in this regard, because we're all aiming to see how we can help leverage a new era of open data, open analytics, so that a lot of these systems can be used not just by big companies and so on, but even the poorest farmer at some point to try and leverage a lot of these systems so that that is possible. And I think over the years, we've had the pleasure of helping showcase a lot of products that FAO has been working on, from their overall geospatial platforms to I think work on Forest Collector a few years back, as well as the work on Hand in Hand, which I think since we featured it in some of the water kind of webinars in the early days of COVID, we said maybe we should work hand in glove at that point, this thing. And also we had the pleasure of showcasing some of the Vapor tools as well. And even earlier this week, we had the pleasure of showcasing Julio and Laura on some of the work on EarthMap as part of our hydroinformatics series that we conducted. And I'm also putting in the chat if you want to learn more about some of that work and the webinars that were done as part of that. Might be useful for some of you. Now, at the bank, one of the things that we've been trying to do is to see if we can also explore a lot of these new open data and analytics systems. And as Parmesh was saying, these are things that have been starting to get developed over the years. And one very good platform which also leverages the Google Earth Engine API that we've been creating is with mainly the ITS geospatial team has been creating at the bank with our support, is the World Bank geospatial platform. And it has the analytics mostly on the internal site right now. And it's been a slow process to try and get it external as well. So for those in the bank, it's geo.worldbank.org, and externally it's maps.worldbank.org. But it's I'll paste these later in the chat as well. So, but that doesn't have much in the way of analytics. The external one, it'll be slowly added over time. We also have a lot of applications we've created over time, such as our spatial agent, which about something like when about 10 years ago when Google Earth Engine came up, That was one of the first times that we also helped leverage that to do interactive analytics on NDVI, other aspects, any place in the world as well. And this is something which we've now migrated also to a web-based set of platforms and to showcase both data analytics and some of the knowledge learning aspects as in the link in the chat. And this has also been complemented with a lot of the work the bank has been doing in different parts, like the climate unit has been working on the climate change knowledge portal, which has recently gone through a big revamp as well, which we also showcased in that webinar earlier, which is there in the chat. And also some new tools on water accounting and World Bank water data and so on, and also some emerging tools that are coming in on environment and biodiversity as well. And that's why I was very interested in the new ABC tool, which I hadn't seen before. And that would be another one which we hope to collaborate in the future with FAO on, to try and help promote more open public domain data and analytics services on a lot of these aspects. Now, the big challenge is to try and see if these can fit into some decision-making framework, because data is always good to visualize in different ways to get insights about a place. And it becomes much more useful when you go up the data value chain from data to information to knowledge to decision support. And that's where to try and see if these could help support decisions for different types of stakeholders. And that's where I think looking ahead, if we can think of ways in which we can help develop customized dashboards for especially a lot of these global data services that are there. So hopefully Vapor also will be global soon. And also you can have using EarthMap will have an API for itself also hopefully soon. So a lot of these you could then help leverage each other's not only data from excellent tools like Google Earth Engine, which are out there, but also other people's attempts at visualization, so that these can be brought into customizable dashboards that every user can make for themselves for helping with the decisions that they have to make about whichever area of interest they have. So this is something which more and more, as I think Padmesh and I and others are looking at, you'll see the connections in terms of the power of looking at a spatial dimension is that it also enables you to look across sectors a lot more. So across traditional sectors of, look, I'm only doing climate, I'm only doing water, I'm only doing agriculture, those are all out the door now, because you have to look at these things together when you're looking at a particular spatial entity, whether it's a watershed or whether it's any other admin area or agroecological zone or other things. And this is where it would be useful to see how we can all work together to help make not only the data analytics part more accessible, but the knowledge and learning parts also more accessible, because there's a need, I think, in the next couple of years, and definitely even after, to help get people to recognize what's out there in the public domain. What is it that they can leverage? What is it that they can use on existing platforms? What is it that they can use to make their own platforms, leveraging a lot of these kind of services? And have these as I think that was a great idea, Parmesh, and maybe we can work together on that, is to have these data clinics or analytical clinics to help support not just our own staff to get better at this, but also clients to be able to access and do deep dives into all of these publicly accessible tools that are there. Because it's something that is changing by the day. When I was studying my undergrad, all the data we found in India related to water resources that they were teaching us was from the Colorado, because all the India data was secret. Now, that's not a great way to use academia, but now over many generations of hydrology programs, finally, they're putting together decent data in the public domain and so on. So this is something which in all of our countries, we'll find that it'll be hard to find one single gauge worth of in situ data that is available in the public domain as a good user consumable service that's there. And this is something which I think we can help also showcase, which is how do you get the ground up, the in situ data with the top down data and collected data that a lot of these platforms showcase. So to also create a good ecosystem for in situ data across all of these disciplines, that can be then used as the truth to go test against for a lot of these new tools that are coming in from Earth observation and models and so on. So that's something which we hope to look forward to working with you all on. And just finally, I think it's something when we look ahead at the future, it might be good to work both at a global level to try and see how to work on all of these things to help showcase information, but also at the retail level, where in particular cases, particular projects, particular countries, watersheds, we could do greater deep dives, whether it be regional programs like the Nile Basin, which we are supporting, or particular agricultural projects, in office to Niger and Mali or other places where you can help collaborate on particular activities as well. So look forward to working with you more and more in the future, because I think we are all on the same side here and we all have the same objectives. And I think combining our professional networks, we can have an even greater reach going ahead. Thanks a lot. Back to you.
Thanks a lot, Harsh. And I think a very, very important perspective from your side. I think the points you mentioned about working at the global and also the retail level is very important. Our aspiration is to have about 40 to 50 use cases which use all these databases in an integrated way and solve practical problems. We clearly have a new opportunity in a new regional operation in Sahel, which is coming up, which is a multi-GP kind of initiative, which is looking at resilience. And I think that project is very amenable to using all these integrated databases. Clearly, we are also looking at countries which will never build these kinds of databases on their own. And we have a unique opportunity of a lot of global databases, say, working in Sudan and other countries. And so with FCV Group, we are looking at how to use data more centrally in planning and all that, to all the kinds of things which we are trying to do there. And finally, as you rightly said, that we have 38 countries with chief data officers now in the Ministry of Agriculture. We need to bring that cohort of people who have been charged with working on data aspects in these governments and convert them from being perception-driven policy making to more data-driven policy making and implementation. So I think we need to do something for them together, basically, so that they are exposed to the range of tools they could use and build a lot of use cases with them. I would now bring in Dominique, last but not the least. Dominique is a senior economist working with World Bank's Water Global Practice. He has worked in Africa and MENA regions on a number of water sector studies on public expenditure, poverty, fragility, co-authors of our forthcoming report on economics of water scarcity in MENA. And he has, as a part of this, worked with FAO and our team to work on the water productivity in Bekaa Valley of Lebanon, which was earlier mentioned by the earlier panelists there. Over to you, Dominic.
Thanks very much, Farmesh. And really, this links very well both to what Harsh has been talking about the applications, but of course is directly related to working with the WAPO team. And I naively went to the WAPO team, Livia and Luis and others, at the beginning of this study that we were doing on the economics of water scarcity, because macroeconomists were asking us, well, what is the marginal value of water across this region? And we should be able to calculate that and understand then how best to reallocate it. And there was a paper published around that time, which I'll share right now, by Dodorico et al. And it's a sort of, it's called The Global Value of Water in Agriculture. And it's one of these papers, one of these wonderful papers, which really tries to just use whatever is possible, make whatever assumptions are possible, and come out with at least some answer to this question. And the rough answer to his question is that the water productivity, if you like, the value of water and that is generated in agriculture, somewhere between 20 cents and 35 cents, depending on whether you look at the water that's consumed by agriculture and then net out what's returned. So that's the question we started with. But when I went to Livia and team, they said, hang on, let's look at this problem in some more detail in the Bekaa Valley. And what's been so interesting going through this discussion is you take this macro level data set, but start looking at it, really ground truthing it and understanding what's happening. So then you realize actually you need crop budgets, you need detailed land cover, you need to understand that it's not just wheat you're looking at, but you've got to differentiate winter wheat from spring wheat. You've got to think about rotations. In the Bekaa Valley during the winter it's wheat, but then in the drier times it's potato. And you know, I'm back in Africa now, and Carl talking about northern Mozambique was making me think of, you know, the intercropping. You know, there can be 20 crops in the field. These are hard things. So my first point is really around this question of how important ground truthing is in using these amazing new tools that we have. But we really do have to do ground truthing. And then they throw up some interesting things once you've done the ground truthing, like the one that Livia mentioned, which is that in fact, you can sort of, it depends what your policy question is. Do you want to increase yield or reduce the amount of water being used? And you know, clearly you can't substitute potatoes for winter wheat. I mean, they're two different things. The economic water productivity of potatoes is impressive. I mean, it's 10 times that of wheat. And even one of the researchers quipped, perhaps I'll get into potatoes now. But the issue here is that they're not really substitutable. And so the question then is, we have this powerful data, and we have this powerful idea that crop mixes and the economic water productivity of different crops and different agronomic practices can be changed, but how do we actually make that happen in practice? And that gets to the retail level, I think, that Harsh was talking about. And a couple of sort of policy ideas we're kicking around with the FAO team are, you know, how do you do quantity regulation? So this, I have to refer to another wonderful paper, the Dionisio Perez Blanco and Perry paper, which compares water conservation policies and water conservation technologies, and sort of stresses the importance that these things work together. And you know, that's clearly the case in somewhere like Lebanon, the Bekaa Valley. So how could we use these policy tools for water managers at the sort of basin level to help inform perhaps agricultural extension and monitor the way that water is being used to make it more efficient across a valley like Bekaa Valley. But finally, I think that it's really important to build in some policy experiments into the bank projects. These are amazing opportunities that we have to try and test some of these issues, some of these ways of working. And there's a third, and I'll put all of these in the chat later, a third paper on Mozambique, in fact, by Christian et al. 2018, called When Water Counts. And it looks at helping farmers make decisions about when to apply water, and that the fact that they don't need to do it through equal amounts each week. The water requirements of crops varies through the growing season, and that type of thing can actually shift the equilibrium of the basin by improving. So that type of idea is the type of experiment that would be great to build into water projects. And finally, because it's topical, I just wanted to say that a lot of the discussion that we had in the MENA Water Report was about importing virtual water. And then Ukraine happens, and you realize that it's a high-risk thing to rely on that. I mean, importing virtual water is happening in MENA. There's no two ways about it. But when something like Ukraine happens, you realize, wow, okay, you really do have to think of the bigger picture. Thank you very much, Panash. Back to you.
Parmesh, you're muted.
Thanks a lot, Dominic. I think you brought a lot of issues together, the macro policy issues, the micro variations in terms of budgeting, even from summer to winter crops, even within one crop. I think, and then an example of Baka Valley in those terms. And I think we have to build a new analytics which takes into account these data sources and develop a more dynamic model and scenarios to be able to really design new kinds of policies and investments there. So I think I really appreciate your perspective on this. I very much thank all the panelists for also responding in the chat. I think there has been a very active debate going on in the chat, and I really admire all the participants for asking very relevant questions. We have less mortality till now. We were at 116 and we have dropped only to 94. And I would like to finish this in time so that we have everyone's attention on these issues there. So I really like the panelists really focused on examples and use cases and applications and all, which is I think would excite people there. I would also like to bring in the two organizers of this webinar, who did all the legwork to do this, in terms of Armin from World Bank, MENA team, and Carlo Brevi from FAO. I would like them, Carlo, to first come in and reflect for 2 or 3 minutes on what do you see as what we heard and where can we go from here.
Thank you, Parmesh, and good morning, good afternoon to everybody. This is an exciting webinar, and I've been participating in many of yours, and congratulations for this series. It's really very, very well done. A few thoughts from what I heard and from this work we're doing together with many of your colleagues in World Bank. The digital agriculture is mainly private sector driven. And this is a starting point for all of us. I think we have to keep it very strongly in mind. R&D is 90% probably from private sector on this digital solution. But there's a strong role by the public sector, which we are, international organizations, governments, client governments, member governments, to improve the working environment. I'm sure I'm not telling you anything new that you don't know. But in this working environment, data is definitely central. I remember one figure that Parmesh was quoting in some of the previous webinars, saying that sometimes the ag tech firms spend 70% of their time collecting data in the field. So bridging this gap, this data gap, is essential. And what FAO has presented is a contribution to that data gap bridging. Through these tools that we saw, and we saw probably 20 use cases in an hour, so it's difficult to digest. But I think we got the idea that there's a big potential in these eyes in the sky. Where do we go from here? We have many channels to disseminate this capacity tools and on the ground at different levels, I think. I will start with the cooperative program that we have with the World Bank since about 60 years. That's a very easy entry point. It's all, the channels are open, the entry points are very clear. We know how to use it. And it's an entry point also to the rest of FAO. But as Ash was mentioning, there's a lot of direct connections between World Bank and FAO that are already taking place, and that would be an easy way also to increase this knowledge exchange. Harsh was talking about data clinics. That's a very useful and excellent way of disseminating these tools. Also, yes, I think also Harsh was saying this, clients, working with the clients, work with the governments or national agencies on the ground to boost their capacity. This is also another very strong point, I think, because eventually this digital transformation will sort the effects only if it's widely used and disseminated at different level. And then the actors of value chains, these are extremely important actors. And these agtechs and fintechs that are working on the ground. We are doing this interesting work with Armin and Harsh in the NENA region at present. Just concluded a series of 3 webinars with them, with about 20 agtechs in the NENA region that are developing different types of digital solution for addressing water management at farm level, but also eyes in the sky. We have eyes in the skies and boots on the ground type of providers. And putting them together is proving to be very, very powerful. So we will see what comes out, but we will stay tuned because we might have more to say about how to put these eyes in the skies and boots on the ground together. I think these are my main points, Parmesh, and back to you. And thanks for this very interesting operation.
Thanks a lot, Carlo, for your reflections. Very useful. I think we'll build on that. Armini, can you come in now as the kind of the main motivation behind organizing this webinar from your perspective, Armini?
Yeah, thank you, Parmesh, and thanks again for continuing educating us on bi-weekly basis about digital agriculture and hosting this webinar. Thanks a lot to all FAO colleagues for being available and sharing extremely interesting examples, and also World Bank colleagues reflecting on the use of the tools that they already applied in their projects. So as Carlo indicated, we already have an ongoing activity focusing mostly in the MENA region, and I think the tools are extremely important and relevant for the uptake entrepreneurs to collect the data. But also I want to reflect on the usability of the tools in our daily work in the MENA region, especially in the areas with the COVID or even without COVID that are not really always accessible. And I personally use quite often the Earth Map tool, which I found fantastic because once you have a new country, it's a very easy way to understand about the overall dynamics. It gives you very interesting visuals. So it's a very good tool to start to work on a new country or even during the implementation to look for some potential hotspots. And I was extremely interested to hear about ABC tool today because I think considering the vulnerability to climate change, we don't have yet so many tools focusing on a climate agenda. So I think this is like a big pioneer that will be very actively used at the World Bank and many other organizations. And I'm looking forward to test it around and see how even onto ongoing projects it can be applied. And a wafer tool, I think it's one of the most often used tools in many projects. As Dominic also indicated, in MENA, it was used in Lebanon, and I believe also in Jordan it was applied as well as in Iraq. So hands in hand, it's a new tool for me, so I'm going to try and test it as well. And I think it's an interesting platform of bringing different sources as well. And just want to say thank you, and let's keep this dialogue together and exchange, because quite often they're interesting tools, but nobody has time to find out about them, that they exist and how we can use it. And then, so I think, again, thanks Parmesh for bringing people together and having this very intense session with a lot of information and a lot of food to thought. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Armini. I think I would also like to acknowledge Tom Karlovitz and Vivek, who have also contributed to this session today. And thanks for all your efforts in making this happen. It was a difficult thing to pull. We have too many panelists and all, and I hope we'll, and I look at the questions in the chat, it's generated very interesting discussion from the audience. And thanks a lot for all the panelists for responding to most of the questions there. I would just like to leave you with 2 or 3 thoughts on how we could build on this as we go forward. As Harsh and Armini also said, we have about 30 programs which would like to go deeper into this. These are programs across which they reflect almost like, I would say, almost 2 billion worth of investment, which we are going to make in agriculture and food in the next 2 or 3 years. So I would urge that if we can do a kind of a data clinic for these teams, especially when they're designing these projects and when they are, developing indicators and monitoring these projects, so that they get integrated into their thinking. And then we are also trying to push all our teams to have data and innovation people specializing in that. We have a good community of practice now across the bank, where people like Armini, you can see she's already hands-on and using some of these tools. So I think most of our people have to get the first-hand experience of using these tools and then developing use cases. The second, we're going to organize an event for all chief data officers across many countries now, the guys who are leading the data work in the countries, in the ministries we are. And I think it's important that we do this next, set of things. And finally, what Carlo was saying, we currently work with about 500 to 600 startups, tech startups globally, who are working actively with our programs to develop an innovation incubator and accelerator kind of a approach. So I think eventually, if those, and I am not saying this, I have done a study, I find that all the startups end up spending 70% time on collecting data and only 10% time on actually developing products and services. That's why we don't reach scale in AgTech. AgTech is way behind FinTech and health tech and edutech, because we haven't really cracked the issue of public source access data for a lot of new startups to access this data. So we are trying to create a platform across our operations where we will make investments in data as a public good as part of our investment, so that people are able to access them. So we are ready to collaborate with all the people who are developing these tools, but then taking them to use case in a country. I want all of our operations to be informed by this data, access, analytics, and use case thinking. And we will work very closely with you to develop a more focused work program, and we look forward to FAO's collaboration on that. I also want to thank Harsh and Dominique for really bringing in a perspective of other programs which are working closely with us. And we hope that we are able to develop a bigger platform on data across at least the sustainable development family, which has water, environment, natural resources, agriculture, urban, all into it. We have a very great part of the bank's investments in this area, and look forward to working very closely with you. And thanks everyone for staying for the full time. I'm sorry we couldn't take more questions, but I think I'm glad we had questions and answers being answered in the chat. So thanks a lot for the whole FAO team. I would like to thank all of you for very, very actively giving us a flavor of what it is. I don't know, we have not justice, but I think we will have more opportunities for our teams to engage with you. Thanks, Giulio, Laura, Marshall, Livia, Carl, Harsh, and Dominique, and also Carlo and Armini for participating very actively. Bye-bye, and look forward to the next webinar in this series when we'll discuss some other innovation there. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.